Welcome to the Retention Edge podcast. So, for this week's episode, I'm sitting down with someone who's built retention from the operations side of the business. I'm talking with Kira Waite from Artifact Uprising, where she leads operations and customer experience. Hi, Kira. Welcome to the podcast. To kick us off, why don't you give us a quick introduction on yourself and your work at Artifact Uprising?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Let's see. I've been at Artifact going on 7 years, and actually have a background in finance and oil and gas. And about 7 years ago, just decided that that was not the industry for me, and so um, joined Artifact and have really kind of just been able to shape the organization and operations as we have scaled to about double the size when I first joined 7 years ago. And so um, now I kind of lead all operations and customer experience as well. So that kind of spans across logistics and small parcel management, some customer retention pieces with the CX side of things, sourcing, which is always interesting in this day and age, and contract vendor management as well. So, kind of all things toward the end of the funnel and all customer touch points. So,
Makes sense. That sounds great. So we haven't spoken about the brand. Maybe to get us started, how do you describe the company?
yeah. I describe Artifact as a photo goods company. We make beautiful products for the higher end consumer. I think that's shifting a little bit these days in that we are becoming more accessible for um, not only all consumers, but also all kind of entry points as well. So we all know that we have an iPhone or a cell phone attached to us nonstop these days. And so we're really kind of moving with the market and understanding how we allow people to print their memories, whether that's in books or prints or frames or holiday cards, really easily. So, what Artifact does is we make beautiful products and we try and make them accessible for anyone to make.
Nice. So, talking about that, it's January. Imagine the holiday period must be the busiest time of the year. Um, what are some of the biggest challenges in a business like yours that people might not anticipate or think about?
Yeah, absolutely. We do the majority of our business in November and December, and most of that happens between Thanksgiving, so Black Friday through about December 18th or 19th. So that 5 weeks is really, really critical and it's really insane. I think what might surprise some people is that we start planning for those 5 weeks immediately. So like we are already planning for Q4 2026.
Wow.
Um, Something that will forever be a struggle when you're in a CPG business like this is you don't really know what customers' tastes or preferences are going to be. You
Yeah.
have a good idea, but it's always a little bit surprising when it comes down to it. What customers really have a taste and preference for that season. And so planning inventory and raw materials can be pretty hard from a demand perspective. So we do our best and usually get pretty close. But from an operations perspective, it can feel a little sticky and a little scary to make sure that you're able to support the business regardless of what the customer outcome might be.
When we talk about customer experience and really talk about your context specifically, how do you think that impacts on retention and loyalty?
Yeah, we We are very customer heavy. So we are, compared to other businesses that I've worked at, we really go above and beyond to make it right for the customer, which is not necessarily what you see all CPG brands doing these days. Also, a lot of CPG brands are very, very automated, lean heavily into AI, and we do a little bit of that. But you are really getting an actual human when you reach out to Artifacts. You're you're paying a premium for Artifact products because they are definitively of a higher quality. Usually, that's something that we're really passionate and stand behind, and we want to back up that quality with customer touch points as well. So, when we look at the retention piece, um, we really understand how important it is to make a relationship with these customers, but also make sure that they feel heard. So, when talking to my CX team, we are big on empathy training. We do empathy training with all of our seasonals every year, and also all of our full time CX employees as well. We also look at outreach revamp every year. So, like how we're communicating to the customer, how we need to update that language year to year, and also just consistently understanding the sentiment. So, what are the customers saying post purchase? What are they saying anecdotally in purchase or prior to purchase in chat and other communication channels? Just really understanding what the customer wants and needs and extrapolating on that to make sure we're using that as a retention tool. One specific example this year that we've started doing is we all know that customers are really up against a timeline during that holiday gifting period.
Yep.
And so one thing we started doing was doing some proactive communications. And we've done proactive communications in the past, but really reaching out to customers and saying, hey, we know it takes a day or two, at least to build a book.
Yeah.
We're just giving you a heads up this timeline or this deadline is coming to make sure you get something by Christmas. And that really does a lot for retention because we're kind of being proactive with the customer and then we can always support after as well. But that proactivity is something we've seen a strong success metrics with.
Great. Well, talking about metrics, and you have a finance background, I'm sure you watch your metrics very carefully. If we speak about retention in particular, what are the type of leading metrics that you watch more closely?
It's one that you actually wouldn't expect because it's not a retention metric, it's an operations metric, but we look at on-time shipping.
Oh,
Um, which is really interesting, but we've seen a really strong correlation between not just delivering an order on time, but getting an order out the door when we say we will for a customer
yeah.
on time. In the days, like in the Amazon era, customers are very, very conscious of any date that they see in cart, and they don't forget that date. And so we have learned how incredibly critical it is to communicate an accurate date that we know that we can meet because it gives the customer confidence. So that's one that we are really paying attention to all season and outside of season as well. And that metric success really trickles down throughout the CX funnel as well. So we know if we ship on time, we're going to see reduced WSMOs, we're going to see higher customer sentiment, we're going to see higher CSAT. And we know that by delivering on time from an operations perspective, we really drive that retention and just that customer loyalty and faith in us overall.
Makes sense. And I mentioned the complexity in trying to make that happen, right? How do you guys pull it together? I imagine this involves different parts of your tech stack as well, potentially other vendors.
It is complicated. This is one of those pieces that we start planning in Q1 because it is so incredibly um, complex. It's really important to balance customer expectations with revenue drivers as well, right? Like we can meet a customer expectation 100% of the time, but then you're going to see revenue loss because you're trying to balance out those dates of driving revenue, but also making sure you can meet a deadline for the customer. And so, one thing we do is we spend an immense amount of time understanding how we balance product SLAs and shipping SLAs and where we can potentially pull tech levers on the back end that the customer doesn't see, right? So, when is it useful for us to upgrade shipping on the customer behalf, right? When is it useful for us to reach out to either our 3PLs or to vendor contacts to say, hey, can we reduce the SLAs during this period? Another really important piece that I feel like is often overlooked is understanding labor and production capacity as well, and how that really kind of filters into determining that date so that you can be successful while still driving revenue and maintaining customer faith. And the last piece is one thing that myself and my director of CX were really passionate about is making sure that we understand what customer we are looking at.
Mm.
So we have higher tier customers that have been with us for 12 years that are spending a lot of money. We have those customers earmarked. If we screwed something up for a customer last year, we have those earmarked so that we don't make the same mistake twice. So really paying attention to that LTV of all customers, especially if something didn't go perfectly for them in the past.
Very interesting. And imagine this translates to some hard requirements for your systems and tracking all of that information along the whole life cycle. Um,
Yeah.
I'm curious about you guys have a custom built software, your editor, right? That powers a lot of the customer experience. How's that working for you? How difficult is it to build and maintain that experience?
It is incredibly difficult. We have, an amazing team of engineers, that are just, like, the most incredible people in that they are so open to feedback all the time. I always think it's gotta be really difficult to, like, build a tool and be so proud of it and then constantly hear, like, that feedback about how it could always be better.
Yeah.
And so they are like the most gracious team, and they truly are just like servant leaders in that they have the customer at the forefront of their mind always. One thing I think is interesting is that if you go make a purchase on our site, and you check out, you'll get an email saying how was your purchase experience, and say you go into that and you're like, hey, the editor was a little sticky here. I didn't like how I couldn't move photos like this. We read every single piece of that feedback. So if you write it, we read it. And so we are constantly iterating on the editor. It is something that never is done, right? So we heard a lot of feedback last year that the editor is great when you're on desktop, but um, it has some opportunity if you're on an iPad or if you're on mobile, which is big with like Gen Z, right? Very few Gen Z are willing to go onto a desktop to build a book. They want to do it all on their phone. And so, we're constantly iterating on what can be made better and easier, and also balancing out like what the LOE, what the level of effort is, right? Because sometimes small changes take a ton of effort. And so, understanding where that, like, low-hanging fruit is and what's most important for the customer experience.
Absolutely. You touched a bit on mobile user experience. Can you say a bit more about that?
Yeah. So, we have had a long road of learnings with mobile experiences because, one thing that often confuses people, I think, that aren't in CPG is there's really, like, 3 avenues to make a purchase. So, there's mobile, there's desktop, and there's mobile app. And so, some consumers really love like a mobile app. Another very large group of consumers prefers just to be able to do things on mobile from their phone, like whether you're using Chrome or Safari on your phone, whatever you're using, they just want to go to the site on their phone and make a purchase. So we do have a mobile app. We haven't optimized it in many years, and we still actually see like a strong percentage of purchases go through the app, which is really interesting. And those are kind of repeat customers that have done it once and are comfortable doing it again and again.
Yeah.
The issue is with app development is it's very difficult and it's very separate from your desktop version of your software. And so you have to maintain those two things in tandem. And so sometimes it behooves you much more to focus on that mobile experience versus mobile app, unless you have in-house app developers, which are just kind of very difficult to find.
Yeah.
Um, and
No.
so this year we are focusing specifically on the mobile piece because we've gotten that feedback, right? I want to build a book on my phone and it needs to be easier. And it's hard because you're building a book with so much detail and so many photos on this teeny tiny device. And so a lot of engineering capacity and product capacity really goes into understanding how to make that easiest for the consumer. Sounds easier than it is.
Absolutely, and of course, we understand very well that struggle. That's why we exist. Obviously, in a much simpler context, typically, as we work with a typical e-commerce brand that has your typical, say, Shopify theme and has already built a very good mobile experience. The challenge is much simpler to translate that to mobile. But I understand the complexity that you're describing, and trying to keep those two worlds in sync is really where the difficulty lies, right? And that's why custom native app development is so hard and so different and has its challenges. And simply maintaining those two worlds in sync becomes the challenge, right? In your case, you have something really complex, right? So that becomes even more difficult.
I know. I always say to people that AU Artifact is a little bit of a different beast because it's kind of like digital product and physical product in one.
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel like I'm supporting a tech stack and like a digital product, and then sometimes I feel like I'm supporting a physical product, and it's a really unique blend of the two, um, which is always hard for people joining the company because usually they have experience in one or the other, and then they kind of have to learn how to combine both, which is it's a fun challenge.
Yeah. How do you work with external partners to build this whole customer experience?
Yeah, our external partners are absolutely crucial to our end product, right? So, no matter how great your digital experience is, you're getting a physical product in the mail, right? And if that physical product isn't beautiful and doesn't live up to your expectations, there it doesn't matter how great the digital product is. Um, and we have a really interesting kind of, breadth of vendors in that we are not we are not manufacturing the books by ourselves, our vendors are on our behalf, and so it's really interesting. You have to really maintain and nurture those relationships, but those relationships look very different based on what product is being manufactured. So for instance, our lay flat books, our signature lay flat is our most premium book. It is really, really hard to make. A common misconception is that I think sometimes consumers think we're like, I'm gonna age myself here, but we're like the Jetsons, right? And you send us all these pictures, and then it's all automated, and we just spit out a book out of this like conveyor belt, and it's done. And that is absolutely not the case. So for a signature lay flat, that book takes a minimum of 45 minutes of human touch time,
Wow.
which is a ton in a manufacturing capacity, specifically for like CPG or small product
Yeah,
goods. Um, and so it's incredibly, incredibly important to understand your vendor's strengths and weaknesses, but I think even more important than that is to know your vendor's core competencies. Um, I'm really passionate about making sure we have 1 or 2 strong focuses with our vendors every year. We almost do like a mini strategic planning session with each of them to make sure that we're aligned with what they're working on and how we can support as well. Again, being like both digital and physical product, it's really, really critical that we are giving them what they need from a digital or tech perspective
yeah,
to allow them the capability to be successful on the physical product side. That's really half the battle. If you're giving them what they need from a tech perspective, what works for them, what allows them to reduce bottlenecks and improve production, that you're already ahead if you're able to do that.
absolutely. I imagine just the technical complexity also of handling all these different partners and giving them exactly what they need in those exact formats.
Yeah, it's tough and they all like very different things. We definitely have some partners who are very, very automation focused. And they don't want to take any product that's too customizable, which is hard for a customizable brand, right? Almost everything we do is customized. And then we have partners who are less focused on automations and are very willing to take the difficult, you know, really kind of design on demand products, but the issue there is that the lack of automation can really slow you down and hinder you during those really busy periods. So finding like a very healthy balance between the two is so critical, and it's really hard to understand where that balance lies.
Makes sense. Um, I'm curious. If you look at e-commerce brands in general, typically where do you find they tend to underinvest, say, in customer experience compared to what your experience has been?
Hmm. Um, I I think people underinvest in I think they overinvest in cookie cutter strategies, which oftentimes lead to underinvestment in like special cases, premium customers, and really like understanding how customers differ across the board. So oftentimes I think when we look at customer experience, we say like, "Oh, this is how I want to do it. This is how I want to perceive my customer experience, so I think this is how everyone probably wants to experience it as well." And that's just in my experience, very far from the truth. I also think that we tend to think of customer experience as a reactive, post-purchase,
Yeah,
um, area, and I would argue, like, it probably is 60% of the time, but there's this other group of people that you can build a relationship with and show really strong LTV improvements when you inform them or support them pre-purchase. One example is that a piece of feedback we always get is your shipping prices are really high. Um, and so one thing we did this year is we started offering chat in cart. So you could chat with an agent in cart or an editor pre-purchase. And the take rate we saw on people chatting into agents pre-purchase it blew our mind. It was unparalleled. We did not know that this many people were having questions in the editor or having questions prior to checkout. And we saw just like this massive conversion uptick just by being able to like chat with someone and ease some of their concerns or worries, talk through why shipping price was the price it was, or talk through, "Hey, I'm ordering this $400 book. Can you look at the PDF and make sure it looks okay? Because that's really scary to spend $400 and, like,
Sure.
not be a photo book designer." And so I think that's a common misconception is that it's always post-purchase, and it isn't. It's actually sometimes you build some of those strongest relationships before they even spend a dime, which has been fun to find out over the past year.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine with the investment of time really that goes as well into effectively the customer creating the product for themselves, all the questions that they might have, all the anxieties that you might have to reassure them about just to be able to finally close that sale. How many probably abandoned carts, right? Just from
Oh,
people
yeah.
not knowing. Yeah.
A ton, yeah, and we learned it really is from lack of confidence. It wasn't necessarily anything that we were doing wrong, but we learned that people just need a confidence boost, and so one thing, like, on, my strategic roadmap this year that I'm really passionate about is starting to expand that project review offering to customers. So, you see it a lot of times on some of our competitor websites, but really like offering the customer like, "Hey, we'd love to look at this for you, and give you some feedback if you want it," just because we saw such great kind of response to that in Q4 of last year.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea. What else are you doing or is on your plan to try and improve LTV in general?
Um, yeah, so we have one thing I'm really passionate about is really looking at CX as a growth engine rather than a cost center.
Yeah.
I think that's a trap that a lot of companies fall into is like everyone has to have CX, right? So just check that box and make sure they don't suck. And to me, that is like an incredibly harmful viewpoint. They are a growth engine and they are your touch point to the customer. Um, and so really looking at how CX can not only serve the customer, but also drive revenue as well. So one thing our director of CX is great about is kind of planning out how can we drive revenue in some of the slower months of the year, right? Like how can we drive that LTV or drive that retention through maybe it might be we tried email outreach. We're starting to do text outreach as well, right? Like, hey, I noticed you finished your book and added it to cart. Do you want me to review it for you? And so looking at some of those outreach methods on how we can serve the customer pre-purchase, um, it is hit or miss. Sometimes you find things that work really, really well, like the project review is something we're really leaning into, and then sometimes you find things that just don't hit as hard, right? Sometimes, we'll reach out via email and say, "Hey, we noticed you didn't finish your project. How can we help you finish? Or we can connect you with design services." And that's kind of iffy because sometimes that goes to primary inbox, sometimes it goes to promotion, and it's just really hard to know how a text only email is going to land with the customer.
Totally. Talking about staying in touch with the customer, um, obviously seasonality is a big part of the reality of your business. I'm curious, how do you go from those main gifting periods of the year and try and create more opportunities to just grow, grow the customer and the opportunity you have there?
Yeah. So a big piece for us is last year we really started expanding our business to business outreach. So we have done a ton of just like really incredibly cool projects for different customers that are businesses. And so leaning into that kind of in the first half of the year has really, really helped us quite a bit. It's also just, it's great for understanding where the complexities in your process are and understanding also what customers really want. Because it's unique in that you have a very direct line to that end customer, whereas usually it's like via email or chat or text. And
Yeah.
not with these customers, you're getting to speak to them directly.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting in understanding. what they want. We've seen like two big things with B2B, which are they love hardcover books and soft cover books, which if you asked us a year ago, we would have said, oh no, they want lay flat books. And so it's been interesting to understand like where we need to expand product breadth there. Um, so that's one piece. And then another piece is kind of leaning into one of the, you know, major backbones of AU, which is making the everyday beautiful. So, we focus on how to get the phones off or the photos off your phone, and actually make stuff throughout the year rather than letting things kind of like pile up towards the end of the year. So, that's always fun. In January, we do a print your year campaign. So, where you look back at like 2025 and print what you have there. Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, and Father's Day are always really big for us. Father's Day is actually bigger. We think it's because all of the moms are buying
Right.
this for Father's Day. It's always kind of funny. We see the most rush shipping during Mother's Day because we think dads wait a little bit and then order like at the last minute.
The danger
Um,
is there.
yeah. So just like understanding your customers, right? Like what are they wanting and what are they asking for at certain times of year? We know our customer is oftentimes female. She is often brought to AU by her wedding. And then she
Mhm.
stays with us through this journey of having kids and building a family and then going on vacations and milestones and birthdays and all of those things. Making sure you understand your customer and kind of leaning into the important milestones in their lives.
Talking about that, I think I've seen you guys have a program around weddings, right?
We do, yeah. We have all kinds of wedding stuff. So that's kind of our bread and butter is wedding. A really popular book for us is Wedding Lay Flat or Wedding Guest Book. The wedding guest book you can write in, so your guests would write
Mm.
in your book, which is really popular. We have historically have like bundles you can buy multiple, and then we also have this incredible team called design services where you just send us a whole bunch of photos and we will curate those photos for you and build a book, basically send it to you and say does this look good, and we'll order it on your behalf, which is great. But we see a lot of weddings. COVID was weird because we didn't see a lot of weddings for a year. But we saw a lot of home decor uptick during COVID because people were sitting around their houses, but now we're seeing really heavy wedding growth again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, if you, over the years, perhaps change your mind on anything when it comes to customer loyalty and customer experience as well as part of the, is there
Mm.
anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. I recently changed my mind because we really thought that customers wanted phones. They wanted to be able to call us and have that outreach, and we used to offer a phone number on site. We don't anymore. It's just really difficult to staff phones, to be completely transparent. And all of the metrics that go along with phones are just really discouraging, right? You look at like time to first response, you look at resolution time. You can't see what the customer is doing. So that's really difficult. And so we invested a little bit in phones last year and we didn't really see the take rate there that we thought we would. And so that's one thing I've kind of changed my mind on. I think, if a customer always asks, hey, we need to talk to you, we will, of course, pick up the phone and call them. But I think in this new age of AI and Amazon, and really like distinct CX flows through a site, it's just not as in demand as it once was. So I think if you asked me a year ago, I would have been like, yeah, it's something we need to have. It's not ideal, but we need to have it. And I don't have a strong viewpoint on it yet, but I don't think it's as critical as it once was.
Hmm, that's very interesting. I'm wondering about the customer life cycle in general, and is there a moment in particular for you guys you find to be particularly critical to, say, closing the sale, but also then driving future sales?
Closing the sale, I would say a couple of years ago, we started offering digital proofs. So, talking about that like homegrown editor system, when we rebuilt our editor system about 4 or 5 years ago, we started digital proofs. And that is that piece that the customer really needs to be able to like see exactly what their book is going to look like and feel confident. And so, I think that's a really strong point in purchase. Um, Also, some of these books take many hours, many days to build, and so that time being under your belt and then seeing that proof is really meaningful. I also think we get a lot of feedback from the customer. This isn't, part of the purchase process, but getting the actual book and having the unboxing experience, I think is really meaningful to customers. We'll get like videos of customers gifting it to a loved one and they're just, crying and it's really heartfelt and it's something that you never forget once you see
Yeah.
that and you're like, "Oh, like we're actually kind of like making a difference here," which is really exciting. So I think that's probably the point where we start retaining customers and when they
Yeah.
get that book and they see the quality. I also think if they get the book and they have an issue or get the product and they have an issue and they reach out to CX, we generally have very, very strong CSAT. We have very strong CX scores because we will make it right. Um, we will make it right. Oftentimes, we will make it right even if it was a customer error. We want you to be happy with the end product that you have, and I think that really sets us apart from some of the other photo goods companies out there.
Fantastic. Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you, Kira. I think we can wrap it up here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.